Morning, everybody. Jim Feist and Joe Mac for you right here Saturday morning. College games are ready to kick off. We can talk a little bit about today's games, but mostly the late stuff because otherwise everything's gone. And then we can look at the pro games and maybe even a little baseball if that's interesting to anybody anymore. Joe, good morning.
Hey, Jim. How you doing? Yeah, we got a good schedule. Like you said, a lot of early stuff in college, but from 3:30 Eastern time on, got a real good chunk of games. Obviously, everyone's talking and waiting to check in on Notre Dame, Georgia, but a good, solid schedule. We're still getting a lot of the, non-conference games. So you got a lot of 35-point spreads, but if you really zero in, you got a few big games, and Jim Early's network definitely has some big games. We got a loaded schedule. Going to load up on the pros tomorrow. So just a quick reminder for folks to give us a call. Toll free, 1-800-323-4453. Jim Early's network been around since 1985. Check us out, 1-800-323-4453. A lot of plays. I know I like a lot of games this week more than usual. I'm usually like 3-4 games in college, 2 or 3 in the pro. I'm a little bit more liberal with the colleges this week. Got 6 or 8 games that I like really strong, so we're going to be giving out some big ones right now.
Well, I think I had 6 games that I posted this week, and I was 5-0 last Saturday in my college games, but last night I had Air Force. I lost with them, but I got 5 more big games posted today, and we got the pro card tomorrow, which should be quite interesting as well. So let's get into it. What would you like to talk about right off the bat?
Well, we can start with the college guys that we're looking at straight ahead. We got a couple of games against ranked teams. Let's touch for a minute on Auburn and Texas A&M. Auburn's not a team that I usually like too much, but I'm looking at them here. Texas A&M's quarterback, Mons, he's been around for a while, but God, I think he makes a lot of bad decisions. He's got a decent arm, but I don't know if he can always be trusted. But I'll tell you what, if Texas A&M can win that game, and they wind up maybe winning the table, which is hard to say in the SEC, but, they lost to Clemson, but, they could still be heard from this year. That's a really good game. I mean, it seems like the SEC gives us one game a week at least where you get 2 ranked teams that are bucking heads. That's a good one. And obviously, let's, not bury the lead here. Notre Dame, Georgia, a lot of talk about the number here, 14 and a half, depending where you're looking. Seems like an awful lot of points. I did a little research. Brian Kelly's been there. This is his 11th year, I believe, at Notre Dame. He's 16-12, according to my records, when he takes points. 16-12, solid, not great, but you know what? Decent enough. But they're just not used to being in this kind of spot. I mean, they've been double-digit dogs a couple of times during Kelly's tenure, especially against Alabama. But, they're going up against a Georgia team that I swear, I looked up and down. I don't know if they have a weakness. I mean, their defense is better than it's been in the past. The hidden thing in college football at times is a lot of teams don't have good kickers or good special teams. They might have the best kicker in the country in this Blankenship, and they've got a lot of speed. So, I mean, I can see why the number would be where it is. I think it's a little higher than I anticipated. I thought when the line came out, we look at 10, maybe 10.5, but you figured Notre Dame. Their best game plan for here, Jim, I think, is the old-fashioned ground and pound. Now, I know that they're throwing the ball more. The quarterback book likes to throw it. They like to have him, kept the ball downfield. He's got some decent receivers on this team. But I think if Notre Dame wants to land under the number here or be competitive, maybe, if you're down a touchdown 5 minutes ago, Notre Dame will take it. They'll sign for it. I think they've got it grounded, pounded, and we're going to find out how big and strong this offensive line is for Notre Dame. Can they manage well against a Georgia team that's not only good on defense, they're deep. I mean, they've probably got 16, 18 guys on this team that could start most other places. So it's going to be a real challenge, a fun game. I think we're going to see a competitive game for the most part. Whether it gets away late, we shall see. We both were talking before we got on the air about losing with Air Force last night, a tough game. They were up second half, and it kind of frittered away. I'm hoping that's not the scenario for Notre Dame here, where things just kind of snowball a bit come middle of the fourth quarter and they can't hold on. But I think we're going to see a fairly competitive game, all in all, in Athens tonight.
A lot of people are looking at the offensive line versus the defensive line and the 50-pound advantage that Georgia has in that spot, whether they can open up that ground game and get a couple hundred yards on the ground. It might take Notre Dame right out of their game. But that's one game, and then we've got a big card. We got some night games down there. We got, a lot of people are focusing on some of these night games, and we should probably take a look at it because of the time of day it is. Utah State at San Diego State's gotten a lot of action this week. That's one of those situations where the home dog has done very well over the years, but Utah State looks like a real good team. Washington State and UCLA. UCLA looks to be like a train wreck this year, and and Washington State's laying about 18.5, 19 points in that spot. But, a lot of people are looking at this kind of stuff and saying, hey, we're starting to find out and figure out who these teams are, and let's go with it, and that's what they're doing.
That's for sure. It's funny. Before last night when USC had a really nice win against Utah, I was telling a friend this week, I said, I know they don't often let coaches go mid-season or even before season ends, but I said to him, I got a funny feeling that this might be a year where UCLA and USC might be looking for new coaches, before we get to early November. Probably not going to happen now. USC, that kind of saved their season last night. But I don't know. I mean, and I'm not one to say, let's fire this coach or that coach. I mean, I hate when coaches get fired. I mean, I know what it's like to be fired, and you don't want to see that happen to anybody. But let's face it, Chip Kelly right now, this is a disaster. I mean, they're getting pummeled left and right. Oklahoma had, I think, 7 drives of 70-plus yards against them last week in that lopsided win. I mean, Kelly has come back to the West Coast, basically sold everybody a bill of goods, and it just hasn't worked out. I mean, he gets very inconsistent quarterback play. The defense, sometimes they're not even within 5-10 yards of a receiver downfield. I don't know. I mean, there's certain teams after 3 or 4 weeks, Jim, that I put on my do not touch list no matter what. And UCLA, okay, they get 18.5 or 19 right now, whatever. They're on my do not touch list. I don't care. I don't like the personnel on his team. I don't like the vibes on his team. I'm not one to be laying big points all the time, but, if somebody's going to get involved there, to me it's a one-way play. You're either taking Wash State, which is, got a new quarterback, gone to Minshew, went to the pros, and everyone's raving about him with the Jaguars. They step right in with another guy. It doesn't seem to matter. Mike Leach's offense, we know they can score 50-plus points a game. UCLA, you know what? They may wind up the season with, 1 or 2 point spread wins for the whole year, and that might be it. So folks should be very careful. I mean, it's not every day that you look and you say, wow, UCLA's taken almost 3 touchdowns. Be careful out there. They are a train wreck. They
really are. Let's move over to the pros a little bit. You got Denver 0-2 on the season playing at Green Bay. And I know Green Bay is 2-0, but they really have not been super strong on offense so far. I mean, last week they got up. They got 21 points quick, and then they got shut down. And Denver, I mean, is this team going to be a train wreck? They're just not going to Flacco doesn't look all that good. Are they going to bounce back? I mean, taking 7.5, 8 points in this game, or is this over? I mean, Green Bay just doesn't look like a team that's going to blow you out.
That's true. I tell you, Green Bay really, I don't want to use the words lucked out, but anyone that saw that pass that Cousins threw for Minnesota last week, I think there were about 3 minutes or 4 minutes left in the game. Just a terrible pass. I mean, dumped it into the end zone. There was nothing but Packers there. Just an awful decision for a veteran quarterback. I mean, look, the Packers had done enough, like you said, offensively in the first half to get a win, but their offense really sputtered from late second quarter on, and their defense stepped up where they had to, but my God, it was an awful decision by Cousins, so that kind of handed Green Bay that win. As far as Denver goes, they've got to get a couple of situations straightened out. Obviously, they seem to go through a different quarterback every year, and I don't know if John Elway takes a lot of heat out in Denver for, these personnel changes. But, I mean, this is getting ridiculous, this merry-go-round or musical chairs, if you will, of quarterbacks. But here's the couple issues they've got to deal with besides quarterback. Their left tackle, this kid Garrett Bowles, I mean, he's committed 1 penalty a game in his career already, and they're basically telling him, we can't be having you hold on 3rd and 4 when we convert, for first down. Everything. He's killing them. Now, I read his quotes. He's very upset. He's mad at himself. But if he doesn't get it straightened out, the Broncos are really going to be in trouble because, that's going to be it. They're not going to be able to protect Flacco, who has no mobility. He's one of the old-fashioned quarterbacks in the league. We just saw an old-fashioned quarterback get benched the other day here at Eli Manning. Flacco is from that same mold, has no mobility. This could be a sack fest for a Packer defense that's played pretty well so far. So the Broncos have to clean up a couple of things. One being the left tackle spot, and they've got to get their ground game in gear. Last year, that kid, the free agent, Lindsey, came out of nowhere and really had a great season. Right now, from what I've seen, they don't open holes for him. He doesn't seem to be quick to the hole. I know he had some injuries in the summer, but the Broncos, you know what? This could be, a 5-11 type season, and Elway and company could be looking for a new quarterback, a new left tackle, and a lot of other help come next year. This is a really defining point. I look at NFL teams that are 0-2, Jim, and lots of times they say this is make or break Sunday, and the Broncos are in that category. It's a tough hill to climb here. Like you said, they're a touchdown-plus dog at Lambeau Field. But, boy, when are they going to get started? It was a brutal loss last week to the Bears. I don't know if they're going to be able to recover here or down the line.
Well, I've not been impressed with John Elway as a GM out there. I think he got lucky when he got Manning, and Manning didn't play well that year, but they won the Super Bowl, but they ran into Cam Newton, who wasn't ready for prime time at that spot. And I really don't think he's done a very good job. I don't like his selection of players and quarterbacks, and I think he's done as great a quarterback as he was. He definitely doesn't choose them very well going forward. It's been a mess, and I think as long as he's going to still stay there, I think it's going to continue to be a mess. But you look at this Philadelphia. A lot of people thought Philadelphia had the best roster in the NFC. And, boy, they are banged up. They just I'm looking at this number, open 7.5. I see 4.5s out there now against Detroit. Detroit's played solid games so far. Their defense looks a little bit better than anybody thought it would be. And, but Philadelphia is really banged up. And then you just don't know about Wentz. He just kind of looks fragile. I know he's a big, strong guy. I'm not saying he's, but he's prone to injury, and there's a lot of money coming on Detroit this week.
Yeah, you and I have talked about it for the last couple of years. We're not impressed with Detroit, but we feel like, there's a little more talent there. Maybe they should be 500, maybe 9-7 type of team. But you know what? If Darrell Bevel, their offensive coordinator, doesn't call that silly timeout in Week 1 against Arizona, which really cost them the game, instead of a win, they got a tie with Arizona. They'd be 2-0 sitting there right now, and be a lot of folks would be talking about them like they are about the Ravens and some other 2-0 teams. The Lions have a little bit better talent than I think people realize, and Stafford has never been a guy that's been a made for prime time type of quarterback. I mean, heck, he's never won a playoff game, but they may be a little bit of a surprise team this year. And like you said, the Eagles very banged up. Wentz, I have great respect for him. He's a tough kid. He doesn't mind, diving for the first down or whatnot. But he, as I said last week, he takes too many what I consider unnecessary hits. He throws the ball up for grabs sometimes and takes shots to the ribs and shots to the chest. You can't survive a 16-game season like that. And, the Eagles love to have their reputation, if you will, with the coach, where they like to gamble. They gamble on fourth down. They gamble on certain plays. Obviously, the Phillies special 2 years ago in the Super Bowl, everyone was wowed by it. But sometimes they take some reckless moves, and they put themselves in a bad position. If they do that a couple of times here, in other words, if they go for it on 4th and 1 on their side of the field and don't make it, they may pay for it here against the Lions team that's a little bit better. Well, people, like you said, the numbers moving in the Lions' favor, so maybe people see stuff. Maybe it's not all just the Eagles being banged up. Maybe some of this is a little respect for the Lions, and they're trying to balance out their attack. It looks like they may have a home run hitter type of pass receiver in this Galladay. He seems to make some big plays for them. So the Lions are dangerous. They're a pesky team, and I think they're a team to watch all year, taking points as long as they stay healthy.
I agree with you. And I'll skip by this Baltimore-KC game for a minute. and drop down. I want to make sure we get enough time to talk about the Sunday night game a little bit, the Rams in Cleveland. This is a game that opened Rams 1. It's up to 3.5. Rams favorite Sunday night at Cleveland. The Browns, who had more tickets written on the Browns to win the Super Bowl than any other team. Can you imagine?
It's crazy. I mean, people are really kind of hyped out at this point. We're only 3 weeks into the season, but, just too much Browns talk. We all know it. That being said, I got to give the Rams some credit. Granted, Breeze got knocked out of the game last week, and they cruised to that easy win against the Saints. The Rams are all business, They may play out in Hollywood, but they're not looking for any Hollywood-type team. They just do their business. Aaron Donald has not got off to a good start. He's a little banged up here. They're hoping to get something out of him. He has no sacks so far, but outside of that, everything else the Rams, you can see in the Rams they like. Okay, Gurley, they don't want to give him a heavy workload, but between him and Malcolm Brown, it's a pretty effective 1-2 punch out of the backfield. And for all the talk of McVay, the coach who loves to throw the ball, let's face it, he wants a balanced attack. He reminds me a lot of the old 49 teams where you'd hear about Montana to Rice and Montana to Taylor. Listen, those teams could run the ball and get big plays on third and short and whatnot. And the Rams are like that. They're a blue-collar team more than people realize, and they're a real good team. I mean, they were in the Super Bowl. They did not play their best game. They certainly did not coach their best game against the Patriots Super Bowl, but they're for real. I mean, they're a legit 12, 13-win team, and, they're going up against a Browns team that, let's face it, Baker Mayfield for 2 weeks has not looked great. I mean, his stats looked wonderful the other night because he threw a little quick pass to Beckham, and it went 89 yards. Outside of that, the Jets really were letting the Browns, the Browns could have scored 40 points in that game, and the Jets hung around really for a while because Mayfield made some bad throws, some bad decisions. The spotlight's going to be on him here. I think he's got to show something for all this talk of Beckham and Jarvis on the other side. Mayfield, he's got to show something, and if this Rams pass rush comes and gets him, you know what? It might expose him a little bit here. I'm not knocking him as a quarterback. Hey, to me right now, he's top 15, top 16 type of quarterbacks in the league, but I think his play so far has been subpar, and the Ram defense, they're legit. They're one of the 3 or 4 best defensive units in the league. I can see why this number's starting to go the other way, and I could see a case where the Browns might only score 13 or 14 points here. So we'll have to see what goes on. The Browns have 4 primetime games on the schedule. People kind of roll their eyes like every week they've got to see a Browns game, but you know what? We're also getting to see them a little bit exposed too. That between the penalties, some of the coaching, and Mayfield, not everything is peaches and cream for this Cleveland team so far.
Absolutely, the Rams are tough. McVay's tough, and when you talk about McVay against Freddie Kitchens, I think it's a tremendous mismatch in that department alone. Goff has been very successful. He got a big contract. Baker is maybe has too much to say for a guy that hasn't proven much. So maybe needs to prove a little bit more before he starts saying too much. And so far that's not been the case. It's a team of egos. Yeah, they're going to be crazy. The dog pound will be nuts in Brownsville over there Sunday night, but they got interesting that the game would open Rams 1, and it's now up to 3.5. That is a very interesting line move for me to watch, and I'm going to keep an eye on it for the next day before I decide what to do with it. Definitely, what do we got? 6, 7 different quarterbacks starting this week than we started at the beginning of the year, and it's hard to determine who's going to step up. Pittsburgh's got a new starter. You got the Saints. They got Bridgewater coming in there, going up to Seattle. They stayed up the Northwest to prepare for this game. You got Russell Wilson against probably Bridgewater or Hill, and that's huge. Cam Newton is out for Carolina, going down to Arizona. Arizona was a 2.5-point dog. Now they're a 2.5-point favorite. The Giants changed quarterbacks. Eli on the bench. That's a big change. And now Tampa is a 6-point favorite. When's the last time you saw Tampa cover as a favorite? But that's, and then of course you got the Miami Jets situation where you have two 20-point dogs, 20-plus point dogs. The NFL is not a parity league anymore. It's really top heavy, and then the bottom part of the league is really ugly. And I think we're just going through a big transition stage in the NFL now with the quarterbacks, A, getting hurt, and B, getting older. And so that's happening. You got Oakland up in Minnesota. Minnesota comes. Cousins got the big paycheck. They didn't want to keep Case Keenum, who led them to the playoffs and played really great as a manager. They wanted to pay the big money to Keenum. They got rid of their three guys that were the backups, Bradford and the other kid down in New Orleans. But and they bring in Cousins, who's making a lot of mistakes. And he said this week, if I keep playing like this, I'm not going to be the quarterback here. And he's right. He won't be.
Yeah, no, they had a great thing going. You're right. They had a good thing going with Keenum, and I didn't understand when they did it. I didn't understand the great desire to get Cousins, who I think is an average quarterback anyway, but the Vikings did it, and I think they probably regret it. And one funny thing that's kind of making the rounds here where I live in the New York area is we're heading into week 3, and yet this is going to be between the Jets and Giants. They will be starting 5 different quarterbacks in 6 total games. Think about it. The Jets started Donald, and then last week they started Simeon. He got hurt, and now they're starting Luke Falk. And the Giants, as you pointed out, Jim, they've made the move, I think, way too prematurely. That's my opinion, from Manning to Jones. I mean, you ask 50 people, and 25 of them around here will tell you, no, it was time to make the move. 25 will tell you whatever. I don't know. To me, I look at it, and maybe they don't, quote, owe Eli anything, but why go into the season? He hasn't played terrible. He's played the average football, but he's not been the reason they've lost these 2 games, and they sit him down. I mean, it's just a disaster. I mean, this week, Talk Show Radio New York was great. I mean, it was a great listen. I mean, Sherman did his show. The Giant coach, Pat Sherman, did his talk show on Monday. He got roughed up a little bit on the air by Mike Francesa, but I didn't think it was terrible. The next day, he quit the show. So, I mean, he only went 2 weeks into this season, and he said, I'm not doing this Monday talk show anymore. He couldn't take the heat. So, it's crazy. I know that that Daniel Jones is the apple of their eye. I like him as a quarterback. I don't know if he deserved to be the 6th pick, but heck, it's the Daniel Jones era. But I do feel bad for Manning right now. I mean, he's going to be standing on the sideline with that kind of somewhat goofy look on his face for the next 14 weeks. It really is going to be quite awkward. But as I said, it's the tale of the story here in New York. I mean, 5 quarterbacks in 6 total games, and this Falk who's playing now has some talent, but I mean, my God, he's 20-something point underdog to Tom Brady and company. And as I wrote one thing this week, hey, don't be surprised if the Patriots cover and go over the total all by themselves here in this game. So it could happen.
We could talk for hours. I mean, AB, finally he gets kicked off the team. He played 1 week. I mean, what a disaster he is. Maybe he goes into pro wrestling. I don't know what he does. But as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, you talked about Zimmer and Keenum. For some reason, Zimmer never cared for Keenum. I don't know why. He badmouthed him even when he was winning. I don't know, in 12, 13 games that year. I mean, he never gave him credit, and he wanted to get rid of him. And he got rid of Bradford, and you got rid of the kid that's down and is going to be starting for the Saints. I can't remember his name right now. And they got rid of Keenum, and they bring in Cousins. I think it was a big mistake, but that was Zimmer, and Zimmer wanted to do it, and he did it. And I think they're paying the price for it. But, that division is wide open, so there's nobody going to really run away with it. As far as all these quarterbacks, we have to make a change. We got these 15, 16-year veterans out there playing, and they're fragile, and they don't heal as fast when you get older. We all know that. And it's time to move on. And I don't feel sorry for Manning, not because I always liked Eli Manning. I like him as a person. I think he's a good guy. He's done some good things over the years. He hasn't always had the best team around him, and it does require having a team in order to be good. I mean, you just can't do it by yourself. But I think his best situation is let the kid come in and play. If he does well, maybe he moves on to another team or retires. If he doesn't play well, he'll come back in as the hero again. He'll get a hero's welcome. I mean, I can't feel sorry for him. He's had a great career. 16 years in this league is pretty tough. And an amazing thing about him is he's been very resilient. I mean, this is a league where the quarterbacks get hurt a lot, and he has been there. He shows up. And I don't think the New York people have appreciated him as much as they should, and they put the blame on him when it really isn't always his fault. There are other players on that team that have to do their job, including the offensive line. So we're running out of time here, Joe. Tell me a little bit more about Jim Hurley this week.
Well, again, Jim Hurley's going to have a rock'em sock'em weekend. Lots of college plays. Get in now. We know games are getting started, and we're going to have a lot of late afternoon and evening action. Just give us a call, toll-free, 1-800-323-4453. That's Jim Hurley Network, 1-800-323-4453. You can also get the plays online. Just go to jimhurley.com. That's Hurley, jimhurley.com. Get them now. We're going to have a lot of college action pros, and as you touched on, too, a little bit baseball, too. We got some wild card races to decide. We're going to go with some baseball over the weekend, too. So college football, day and night. NFL, big schedule here on week 3. A little bit baseball, too. 1-800-323-4453. You'll be glad you checked in.
I don't want to cut you short, Joe, but we're running out of time on the recording. And have a great weekend. We'll talk again the early part of next week. And good luck with all your games.
All right. Take it easy, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And that's it for today on this podcast. I'll be doing a podcast myself a little bit later about some other issues around sports and sports betting. But thank you for tuning in, and make sure you follow Joe at Jim Hurley Network, and we'll talk to you soon.